Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. We're going to talk. This is a conversation with Avery today. We missed out on having Avery's company last week, and we missed out on having my live feed last week too because I was away. So we're now fortunate enough to have Avery with us again. So we're going to talk today about. I'm having a bit of a problem because my earphone keeps dropping out, so hopefully I'll be able to hear Avery in a moment. If not, I'll have to switch over. But the election on Saturday was a catastrophe for the Liberal Party, and it's something that we need to have a conversation about because this is a change in politics that's going to impact the political framework, the political landscape for some time to come. And we need to make sure that we're able to assess what's happening. And one of the questions that we are asking is this one, and that is the Liberal Party becoming a minor party with little relevance? Is the question. I'm going to ask Avery to respond to that question, and we'll see where we go there while I fix up my headset. How are you, Avery? It's good to see you, mate.
I'm better now. Over the weekend, I was pretty crappy. I had woke up with a temperature around about 41 degrees and coughing really badly, and I'm better now. And not 100%. I will cough during this live feed. I'll try and avoid it if I can. But I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, I need you to keep talking, Avery, because I'm just having trouble with my headset. So just tell us a little bit about how you're viewing the party and or both political parties and what's happening. Do you think what changes are likely to be made? I guess.
Written to him. I've written and congratulated him on his win yet again. I've also asked him to make a change, to propose a change to the way people vote, and that is that for people my age in our 70s, it's not so easy to go vote. We went down 4 times to early polling centres, and each time there was a queue that was 150, 200 meters long, 4 deep, and we couldn't get in. We just turned away.
I got my
And
sound back. Thought I'd just let you know.
oh, good. Yeah, we say 4 times we went to early polling centres, and 4 times huge queues. And we just decided that we'll get down to the polling station on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. And when we did that, we were like second or third in the queue. So
Right,
we
so the
got up.
polling stations on the pre-polling were pretty busy, were they?
The one in Salisbury, for example, was the there was cars backed up along Park Terrace, and the line itself was about 200 meters long, four deep,
Yeah.
and people seemed to be getting frustrated, and we just said to hell with this, and we sort of drove away,
Right.
and then went down on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock and voted. And what I've suggested to Tony Zappia, our MP, is that he proposed a change to make it easier for people to get postal voting. Uh, People who've retired, and say over the age of 65 and retired, should just be able to apply for a postal vote. Not ill, infirm, looking after somebody who's pregnant or whatever it happens to be, just about to give birth, is the usual sort of rules. I've not had a reply yet, but I'm sure he will reply because he's replied every
Could
other time I've written.
could part of the problem be they just didn't have enough polling booths open for pre-polling as well?
I think so because in for all of the Para Hills, Salisbury, Modbury, Tea Tree Gully um, area, the 5096, 5097, 8 areas,
Mm.
5094 as well. They had 4 polling stations
All right,
for
not,
early
not enough.
voting.
So let's
Yeah,
let's talk about the election. Because sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that, and you might have already done that. But
yeah.
my take is that the election is a strong indicator that the Liberal Party are no longer able to connect with the community, that they're on their way out, that the Nationals now, in fact, the fact is the Nationals now have more seats, I think, than the Liberal Party do. And as a result of all of that, one wonders whether or not the Liberal Party are a force in this country or not. Any thoughts about any of that?
I did say when you couldn't hear me, I was saying that the Liberal Party is long and well established. It started up in the 1940s, was it? Menzies.
1948, I think it was, from
Yes,
memory. I'm not 100% sure.
I thought it was the 90s, but a long, well-established party, and I think it's declining. But whether it'll become a minor party as you had in the banner, I don't know. Would I like to see it become a minor party? Probably not.
No,
Right?
no, neither would I. Neither would I actually, because I think we need a strong opposition.
Yeah.
I mean, any party does in our system. One of the things that I would like you to comment about is something I heard watching Q&A last night, was that all of the panelists agreed, both parties agreed that we are in fact have the best electoral system in the world, was the way they put it. I'm not too sure of that. I haven't done an evaluation of the rest of the democracies. But do you have a sense as to where we sit in terms of our own electoral system, whether it be compulsory voting, whether it be preferential voting for the reps, proportional for the Senate, our structure of parties and how that works, because we could have a variety of parties as opposed to just a two-party system like they do in the United States. What do you think of all of that?
I didn't see the Q&A, but in general, I would agree. We've got a great electoral system. There are changes that I'd like to see, but I think proportional representation rather than preferential voting. I think Tasmania uses a proportional system. I'm not sure, but
They have that.
uh,
I think Avery, they have the Harris-Clark system, don't they? But I think that's only with the state elections. That's not with the federal elections.
yeah, I said I'm not sure about that. But
They have
I lived in
that system's far more complicated than proportional representation. Even I don't
Oh, right.
understand.
So,
You have to be a
okay.
mathematician, I think, to understand that system.
Well, you've got to be a mathematician to try and understand the how they distribute preferences here as well. I mean,
Yeah.
what was the quotas that they get and things like that. But I've lived in countries where they've had proportional representation, and the governments that you get are generally uh, more balanced, if you know what I mean. Um, you don't get when I lived in the UK in the 1980s, before the Falklands War, Margaret Thatcher had a majority of about 10, something like that, in the House of Commons. After the Falklands War, she called a snap election and she got a 115-seat majority. You would never get that with proportional representation. And you wouldn't get it with preferential voting like we've got here, a majority as
But you
big as
would,
that.
yeah, but you would tend to get a wider distribution of parties, though. You would get, you wouldn't have, under the preferential system, it's unlikely to have people like One Nation, Clive Palmer's party, Australia First. They're less likely to have a voice in the House of Representatives than they are in the Senate because of proportional representation, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Any of the minor parties contesting lower house seats really, in my opinion, are wasting their money because the minor parties, particularly if they're one issue parties or seen as one issue parties, people in the lower house, they don't vote for the single issue. You know, they're more concerned about the price of their groceries, the price of gasoline, how much rent they've got to pay.
Yeah.
They're not concerned about animal justice or child protection, or they might have it in the back of their mind, but when it comes to the big picture, it doesn't. They're more
Yeah,
focused on
yeah, and
on
we certainly experienced
them.
that for the Child Protection Party, didn't we? I mean,
Yeah,
we have first-hand experience what it's like to stand for politics,
yeah,
and it can be, brutal, I guess, from the perspective
yeah,
of working your gut off but not getting where you want to go. I
yeah.
guess.
Well, you look at those two elections that we fought. One for the upper house, where we got just under 2% of the vote on a party that had been registered for about 2.5 months, and we got 16, 17,000 votes, something like that. Where the electorate was 85,000, right? The number of electors votes that we needed to have to gain a seat, and then we contested the lower house seat of Mayo in the federal election and got less than 800 votes because the lower house is everyday issues that affect everybody. The price of, I don't know about eggs, but the price of the groceries, the cost to fill up the car, things like that. And
Yeah,
people
and I
don't
think
vote for the issues in the lower house.
now the other question that I wanted to raise with you was the degree to which Trumpism played a part in this election. Now, I'm a bit split, frankly, on this one, Avery, because I think that um, the language that Dutton chose to use on occasions was Trumpist. But I don't think that it was. It certainly might have appeared to be Trump light, but it certainly didn't resonate with the Australian population. And so there is some commentary now that suggests that Australians, we see ourselves so differently from the rest of the world. And maybe that's partly because we're a bunch of convicts and just see see everything differently. But because
Speak for yourself, Tony.
yeah, well, that's true. I'm speaking about my family heritage.
Yeah,
Um, so, and that perhaps we just don't like anything. And I heard this comment as well that we don't like anything that's imported or that seems to be imposed upon us from elsewhere. Um, because we're ostensibly quite proud of the electoral system that we currently got, and we don't wish to see any changes. So, do you
yeah,
think that Trumpism had any relevance at all in terms of the way people viewed this election?
I do. One of the reasons is because um, Dutton was talking about introducing a Doge style government efficiency program. The way Musk has been doing it. Um, which is basically a slash and burn, going in with a chainsaw instead of a scalpel. There was other things that he was talking about with immigration. People like Gerard Rennick, to what he was saying about immigrants, truly disgusted me. And I'm hoping that he's lost his seat. He was up for election again this last last Sunday. I'm hoping that he's lost his seat because he's unfit, in my view, to be a member of parliament. Really denigrating immigrants, saying that they were a bigger threat to the economy and the environment than climate change. Um, there's other things about Trump. Uh, Trump light is a good way of, I think, was a good way of describing the sort of things that the Liberals were talking about. One of the things that I mentioned when you couldn't hear me was that there was pre-polling 2 hours after the polls closed. There were pundits on the TV were predicting an 86 seat win for the 86 seats for the Labour Party, and they were basing that on pre-polling on exit polls, where they asked people, why did how did you vote? Oh yeah, I voted for Labour. Why did you vote for Labour? Because Trump, because Peter Dutton is a mini Trump. The Liberals are MAGA sort of thing, make Australia great again, that sort of thing. And I thought it was pretty remarkable to hear so soon after the polls closed, they're predicting a win like that, and they weren't that far off. I think it was about 83 seats or something like that they're looking at.
We're about, I don't know, I haven't looked at the figures today, but they certainly were around 84 the other day, and you could do a quick check on that for me.
I'm going to do that right now.
Because the other thing that I wanted us to consider. Oh, how did I put that up? Come on.
Slip of the finger, Tony.
The other thing, yeah, I keep pressing the wrong button. It's quite odd. Anyway, one of the other areas too is really about where the government is likely to go from this point on, and whether a mandate gives them gives them the long leash to be able to make decisions about extreme progressive proposals, as opposed to steady as we go. We've done all this stuff over the previous 3 years. Let's just sort of massage that and add to that. And I know you've got to think about nuclear, but so I don't know whether I should discuss that with you or not. But that certainly was a topic that that turned a lot of people off because they may not have understood it or whatever, and it might have been articulated poorly, and it's going to take too long to implement. So there's other stuff there. So what I want to discuss with you at this point is, what does it look like being a parliament, having a government that has won such a majority that doesn't need to go to the Tills or anybody else in the House of Reps, may need to go to the Greens in the upper house still. But what does it mean given that they've won such a majority, and what sort of implementation does that mean for them in the future? Like, how will they go about that, I guess?
Well, with a majority, the results at the moment, the AEC are 83 at the moment, and they're predicting possibly as many as 88 or 89.
My God.
Yeah. What that means is you need a majority of win 76 seats. You've got a majority of 2. With a majority of 8 or 10, which is what they're looking like they might have, if somebody dies, if somebody quits, things don't get tough for you. When you've got if they won 76 seats only, then they're very reliant upon the Greens or other parties, and they're very reliant on getting a consensus, maybe persuading the coalition to support some of their policies.
But I guess my primary question, though, Avery, is: does it give them, given the large majority, the right to be able to go more progressive? Like free education, free dental, make some of the progressive decisions that could be made, which they may not necessarily had a mandate for, but or which they didn't discuss during the election, but which at least they could do now because they would feel confident that many of those decisions would be approved by the community. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I do. And my view is yes, it does give them that they have got that mandate, even though they didn't say we're going to give free dental or free education in the election in the election campaign. They they said we want to implement all these progressive policies. They talked about changes to Medicare. They didn't say what the changes were. They said what some of the changes would be, but not all of the changes that they. So they could say, well, look, we were talking about changes to Medicare. One of the changes we're going to make is free dental, and we've now got the majority in the House to pass that. And uh, the thing they've got to do with that is work out how they're going to fund it, which is a completely different issue. But they've got the majority where they could absolutely guarantee getting that through. So
And I
I
think,
can't see any of the 86 or whatever they've got voting against it.
yeah, they got, and so there's this feeling, I think, that they have the right now to go ahead with renewables,
Yeah.
to get to that 80 or 90% or whatever it is that they're aiming for by 2030. Um, they at least have. I guess what we will see is the implementation or the further implementation of policies that they've already undertaken. So building more houses. So we're going to see whether or not the targets that they've set in terms of building homes has actually eventuated, and whether also that means that at the end of the day, there will be people in the community who will say, "Yep, they've done it. They've been able to do all those things that were a bit up in the air. We weren't too sure because it was early days, but they've now been able to complete those particular tasks." So we will have, I think we as a community will have an opportunity to see whether they are good to their word. I guess that's what it amounts to
Yeah,
at the end
but
of the day.
yeah, we're going to have to wait for that, obviously. They do, but as I say, they do have, to me, if they've got 83, 86, 89 seats, as the AEC's saying, um, then they've absolutely got a mandate. Getting 76 seats gives them a majority. I'd say it doesn't give them a strong mandate. But having
No.
86, 88 seats, yes, they've got a strong
Well,
mandate.
when it's one of the largest wins in Australian political history,
Yeah.
one can salivate over that, I guess. And the other point too I wanted to raise was the response from the right around this. I had a great deal of joy of watching some of those wonderful people on Sky News, Rowan Dean, um, Paul Murray, those people that were declaring, Sherry Markson, who declared that this was going to be that the polls were wrong, that she had
Yeah.
inside information about what the polls were going to indicate, only to find out that it wasn't the case. And to see it's fascinating. I don't know whether you've had a chance to watch any of Sky News after all of this, but it's fascinating watching them try to put a spin on the unspinnable.
Yeah.
So trying to articulate what all of this means, but basically what they're talking about is where does the Liberal Party go from here, given that in a sense it was almost wiped out. So it reminded me a bit like the West Australian election, where they were literally, apart from one or two seats, wiped out of WA. And you wonder whether there were any lessons they could have learned from that election that they didn't take to this one. It's bizarre.
Yeah. 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 One of the things I thought when I heard the results start coming in was the way the coalition is going, they'll be able to hold their caucus meetings in a Tarago, an 8-seat van. It was, it was, I thought these are going to get their butts absolutely wiped. I was at one point I was thinking they're going to look at Labour Party's looking at 100 seats. It's not as big as that, but even say 88 is a remarkable win, especially if you think about just like the Canadian election, right? Um, in January, the Liberal Party in Canada, that's their Progressive Party, uh, was was like 3% chance of winning. Here, Albanese's government was a small percentage chance of winning. It was going to be a Liberal National coalition government in May, and look what happened. And
But is
part of
it?
that, in
But
Canada, it was Trumpian policies that turned them off. Here, it's we don't want Trump type
but
policies.
I think obviously it was a little bit different in Canada, though, wasn't it? Because they were wanting to take over.
Oh yeah,
They wanted to annex Canada and make a 51st state. There hasn't been that hasn't been the case here in Australia. Heaven
not yet.
forbid, not
Yeah,
yet.
give them a
Maybe they
chance.
consider us just an outlier to Hawaii. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
But the other thing too was um, that the politics, I guess, in Canada was so far different from our own, and also the Canadian system is first past the post as well.
it
So
is. Yeah,
so they didn't. So it's a different electoral system
yeah,
altogether,
yeah,
um, and it was an amazing win by
yeah,
Carney. There's no disputing any of that. But I think the win by Albanese is far more resounding in many ways because of the number of seats proportionally that the Labor government have won.
yeah,
And also the thing that between Canada and Australia, I think, is that sense and that pride in being different.
yeah.
Canada sits on the border, so they feel kind of attacked by the US. Now, the other issue that I think we need to discuss also is um, the degree to which Albanese needs to make a stand against the tariffs and any of the other behaviours that we are seeing from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And just on that subject, I noticed today that Australia is attempting to negotiate a free trade agreement with the EU and India, which is no surprise. I've been suggesting that for months. That's
Yeah.
what's likely to happen, and it
We
has. Any response
we
to
should
that?
be we should be negotiating free trade agreements with every country that we possibly can, right? Because free trade means that the price that we pay for goods that we import from China or the EU, Argentina, right, is uh, they're not necessarily going to be cheaper if we negotiate that deal, but because compared to Australian made, right? Because uh, but the consistency of supply and if we've got that competition coming in, that's going to help to reduce prices for everybody. The more goods we've got available, the more you know, I was going to say Walmart. We don't have Walmart here, but Big W are going to have to uh, reduce their prices on what they sell. Woolworths or Coles going to have to reduce their prices to compete with others, which is going to benefit us. And you get that with free trade agreements. You don't get that
I,
when
I
you
think, yeah,
got
and I
you
think the
tariffs.
interesting thing here too is that um, and I agree with you. I don't understand necessarily why we've been sucked into this notion that the America, who's the largest consumer of them all, is the one who we have to acquiesce to the most. Because not only is there China, but there is, there's India, there's Asia, there's on our just above us is Indonesia, which is the largest Muslim population, has about 185 million people. Um,
220.
in 220, whatever, it's a lot of people, nevertheless. But and then we've got Europe and we've got Africa. We've got like the rest of the world is massive, you know,
Yeah,
and some of those countries are closer to us than the United States.
yeah.
So why is it that we have kind of ignored all of that? This is what it seems to me. Maybe we haven't, and maybe a trade minister would tell me different. But it seems to me that we've ignored all these other opportunities for all these years, and now we have an opportunity to, or we're being forced, I guess, to look at those sort of trading partners and opportunities because of the US.
Well, with China, we negotiated a free trade agreement sometime. We've had one for a few years now, not decades or anything like that, but I think it's since Trump 1.0, we've had a free trade agreement with China. Uh, that's a market of 1.3, 1.4 billion people. If we negotiate with
Well,
one with India,
just on that point, Avery, don't forget Morrison stuffed it up also by being so anti-China as
well,
well.
he did, but we've still got a free trade agreement with China. Right
Yeah.
now, we've got one, right? A market of about 1.3 billion people. Uh, if we negotiate one with India, we've got a market of about 1.4 billion people. It's the most populous country on the planet now.
Mm.
If we negotiate a free trade agreement with the EU, forget the UK because they're not part of the EU anymore. But there's a half a billion people. A free trade agreement with the United States, we're talking about 320 million people. So if we just those three places, the EU, China, and India, we've got what's that getting on for 3.5 billion people that we've got a market for.
And
Market, dude. Those three
yeah,
places.
we should never forget that China is the country that makes it seems to make at least 80% of our goods.
Yeah,
So to ignore them and not to trade with them would just be crazy. Which is
yeah,
what the United States has done is they've kind of kicked themselves in the face really around all of this. I don't know where you've seen some of the stuff Trump's been talking about in terms of
yeah,
number of dolls children should have and the number of pencils they should have and all that sort of stuff.
yeah,
If you want a real laugh, watch Jon Stewart on on the Daily Show
yeah.
from
We see
yesterday.
it.
It is a classic takedown of Donald
Yeah,
Trump, and it's worth a chuckle.
yeah,
But we've got to kind of do it on our own now. This is the
yeah,
challenge. And well, it's not just on our own; it's in collaboration with New Zealand and countries that sit around us, I guess. Um,
yeah,
and and let's not forget the Pacific. But the thing that keeps coming back to me, I guess, and the thing that I tend to focus on, which is our connection with the United States, is historically it hasn't been that the United States has necessarily been kind to us. It's that we have sat in the Pacific region, which meant we've had to be kind to them, in fact, because it's been, you know, it's about them having bases at Guam and them being in the Pacific and their defence of the region because of China's influence and all that sort of shit. And then there's, which disturbs me, which is us worrying about, ships, Chinese ships that are sailing around our coastline. Um, and, whether defence is that important, as if, I cannot conceive of anything. I don't know how you think, where you think about this. It is impossible for me to conceive that the Chinese would militarily try and take over Australia. Like
I don't think.
their game. Sorry, I'll just finish this point off. Their aim is to dominate in terms of trade, building and making things, and technology. That's their
Yeah,
deal. So why would they? If we're prepared to still sell them our minerals, which we do at an enormous rate, why is it that they would even bother? So what do you
yeah.
think about all that?
I don't think they would. Right? I mean, I've said in the past that they can be a threat, and I've said in the past to you that if they were to invade us, right, that there's no way we could possibly defend ourselves, which is why we rely on the United States. Excuse me, but I don't think that they've got any
Yeah, but
plans
I
to
just
invade us.
wonder. I wonder
They
whether
don't need
that's.
to. They
Yeah,
don't
but I
need
wonder
to
whether
because
that idea is really about fear mongering than that it is about a reality. Like,
no,
is there? You know what I
I'm
mean?
not. Yeah, I know what you mean, but I'm not saying they're building up threat and they're going to come and invade us. I'm just saying they could, if
Mm.
they did, we couldn't defend ourselves.
Yeah,
Right?
well, there's
They've
no
got an army of
disputing that.
1.4 million people. We've got an army of what total armed force of about 70,000, 60,000. There's no way we could defend ourselves if China decided to invade. Are China going to decide to invade? I very much doubt it. They don't need to
Well, they
because
don't need to. That's my point.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't need to. They 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 are used. They have done what the US was doing for decades, and what the US has abandoned under their dear fascist leader. They've abandoned soft diplomacy. The
Oh,
Chinese
spot on.
they've really mastered it with their Belt and Road Initiative. Somebody in Tanzania, they want to build a bridge. Chinese say, we'll pay for it for you.
But they did it.
Right?
They did it here in Australia too with the Darwin port, didn't they?
Yeah.
Didn't they come in with a Chinese organisation and took over the port, basically?
Yeah.
So it's not
A
like it's
99-year lease.
yes, it's not like it's new to us. You know, and you know, so I guess the question remains: should we therefore be more inclined to look to China for not only trade, but I reckon even for assistance? So what would it be like if we developed a military allegiance like we have with the US, but with China? Now, there's an idea. No one's talked about that yet. So here on the internet, I'm proposing, Avery, a new proposal to the world that perhaps Australia should look to China to become, and I'm not a Chinese hawk, and I'm not a communist, I am a socialist, but not a communist. But, you know, should this be something that we should eventually consider? What do you think?
If we were to adopt their sort of values, then okay, a military alliance with them. If they were to adopt our values, definitely a military alliance with them. But
Yeah, what? Okay, hold on. I've just done a session on values on a video I did just before we went to, and I suggest people watch it. It's a great video, incidentally. But what do you think? What are the values? What values are you talking about?
Like for example, freedom of speech. All right. I mean, like for example, freedom to vote, freedom of religion. I don't support religion, but people are free to worship who they want to or not.
Yeah, but you raise a great point. You raise a great point because they're not even doing that in America now. All those values that you just discussed are out the door. So is it more? Are you more likely to get a hearing around some of those values in China, or are Chinese more aligning themselves with the United States around the stuff you just mentioned? It's an interesting notion, isn't it?
On those things there, I think the United States is aligning itself with China. Right.
Right.
Your question was should we form a military alliance with them? And I would say not while our values and our principles are different from theirs. You could have minor differences.
But what could an alliance? Okay, but what do you think could? Let's say, okay, let's think out of the box. Now, for those people that are watching, there's quite a few people on YouTube now. So for those people that are watching, make a comment about this because I'd be really interested to know what you say. Oh, there is a comment here, incidentally. I didn't notice that. Hello. Yes, now is worrying with such an unexpected election result and how. No, I'll read that later. Thanks, JP. But just back to my original question: what would what would an alliance with China look like if it was similar to the alliances that we have with the United States?
We would be buying submarines from China. We would be buying.
No, we could buy submarines from France or from the UK.
Well, the thing is that we don't. We buy submarines from the United States.
No, but we were originally going to buy them from France.
I know we were, but that's a different topic there. I mean, we've spoken about about submarines before, right? The French decision was a good decision because it's a good submarine. It was a bad decision because they said take the nuclear engine out, modify the entire thing there, which make it diesel electric, and that doubled the cost. Right? Instead of just saying
okay, Avery, we know what you think about. We know your thoughts on that. Let's not go there just at this moment, but I will at some point. But anyway, what would an alliance? Let's say that the Chinese had an alliance that was similar in the way that the US have one with us. So it's it could be about supplying us with military equipment, whether that be, or it might be submarines, whatever, boats or aircraft or whatever. So it could be about that. But you could still buy that from the United States. What does it matter? You could have people. Sorry.
I want to throw a question at you.
Yep.
What is our alliance with the United States all about?
Well, it's about having an agreement that if we're attacked by another country, that
It's
they
a,
will come
it,
in. It's a bit like NATO in that sense,
it's
AUKUS
it's
or
it's
ANZUS.
about
ANZUS.
fight. It's about fighting against communism. That's what it was all started up for.
I thought it was fighting
Rebellion.
against an aggressor. Does it have to be communism specifically?
No, it was about when it all started, when NATO started up, when there's a thing called CETO, the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, started up as a fight against communism. They
Yeah,
didn't,
well,
right?
and that
So
was
that's
that
what.
about was that around the Vietnam era and all that sort of shit? Because
CETO, yeah.
because quite frankly, that didn't work out too well.
No, it didn't. And NATO's worked out remarkably well because that was all about not having another war in Europe because that's where all wars seem to start.
Yeah, that was about beating off Russia, basically,
Yeah,
and keeping those
yeah.
borders,
It,
and
it
particularly
was
when
a,
Russia fell. But
it was a fight against communism is how that all started up. That's why I said, what are we? What is our alliance with the United States
well,
about? It's
let's
about the fight
okay,
against
but
communism.
let's take the notion around communism out of the picture. Let's make it about shared interests, trade, um, self-defense. So one would wonder if China were on board, who would we need to be defending against?
The
Because
penguins in McDonald
maybe it
Island.
would be the US.
No, the penguins in McDonald Island.
Yes, spot on, spot
Yeah,
on. Um,
it may be the US.
maybe we don't need to have military alliances though. Maybe the world is so structured now. All we need is trade alliances.
Trade alliances are the best thing we can have because trade alliances, where you've got free trade agreements between the different countries, both countries prosper.
Yeah,
Right? And if one of the things that lead the war in Ukraine, that is about territory. That is about Putin wanting to re-establish the Soviet Empire. But
yeah.
uh, the wars in the early 20th century were about territory. They weren't.
Oh, good point.
But yeah, I mean, you think about it. In World War One, that was all about expanding the German Empire. World War Two was about expanding the German Empire, rebuilding the German Empire. Right?
So apart from like wanting to take over Greenland and Panama Canal and Canada,
Yeah.
there's no real need now to try and take over other countries unless you're Russia wanting Crimea and then the rest of Ukraine.
Yeah.
So and I guess some of the old satellite countries, but
Yep.
really apart from that, there's probably what I'm saying here is there's no need for the sort of military alliances that we needed to have in the past. Maybe there's no
No,
need for that now. Maybe that's all gone.
that's a fair point. But do we really need to have those big military alliances spending billions of dollars, or the United States is going to be spending $1 trillion next year?
Mm.
Um, do we really need them when soft diplomacy works so much better?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I've got there's a comment, there's a couple of comments on our YouTube channel, which is great. And it's nice to know that people are engaged and are commenting. We've had a number of views so far, which is really pleasing. But someone said the oligarchs can't let communism be a thing. Um, that's a reasonable. I can understand where that person's coming from, Avery. Can you, in relation to that, where the oligarchs, so the wealthy can't let. But I think can we correct that for a moment because I think in China there are a lot of wealthy people.
There's
They're like
oligarchs in
China
China.
to have that idea that China's all these poor people wandering around making Nikes and shirts and other socks and other stuff is not necessarily factual anymore.
There,
That
there
in the
are
well, there are people still doing that. I'm not saying they're not,
yeah.
but I'm
No.
saying that there's this growing middle class now in China
Yeah.
that are wealthy, And so, yeah, China's trying to straddle this space between communism and capitalism, I think.
And they've done a really good job of that. No, uh, can you just read out that that quote
What,
again?
the music one
The,
from music? The
I don't know who it
oligarchs.
was.
Oh, no, there's one
The
from
oligarch.
JP.
Yeah. No,
The
no,
oligarchs can't let communism be a thing,
yeah. In
says music.
in the
So,
Soviet Union, right, which
yeah,
was a communist country, they had
yeah,
they had billionaires. They didn't have many billionaires, but they had them, and they
yeah.
got even richer after the fall of the Soviet Union. In China, they've got billionaires. Um, I don't know. I was just looking up how many there are, but they're quite low
Yep. How
down
many are
actually.
there?
China has got. It's only got half as many as the United States, 450.
All right.
Right. The United States
Yep.
has got 902 billionaires. China 450. India 205.
All right.
171 in Germany. 140 billionaires in Russia. Right. Now
Right.
China's a communist country. Do they? They've got. If they've got people. I can't remember the name of the guy, but the one that started Alibaba. He's a multi-billionaire.
Yeah.
He's an oligarch.
So there's
Chinese
one
don't care
from.
about oligarchs.
So I don't know if you see that one. There's one from JP. China's Navy ships sailing around Australia. They did it to stir up electoral emotions, and the libs fell for it. Go JP. I think I kind of agree with that to some extent,
Uh,
maybe.
I don't know about that, but
Well,
uh,
it's a fair comment.
they were they, they were sailing around Australia, but it's not as if they were in our territorial waters or our economic zone. They were in international waters. They are free to do that,
Yep.
right?
And
Why they do it?
this is the this is the other one from
My
JP.
camera's in the way there.
You can't see that. It says, hello.
I can
Yes,
see it
now
now.
it's worrying with such an unexpected election result, and now they have to deliver. As for the libs, they're stuck in a time warp, back in the
Back to
1960s and backward looking, and yes, and so on.
yeah,
So, yep,
yeah,
agree with all of that, buddy. Thanks
definitely.
for presenting that. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
We're just showing off the technology that I can bring up these quotes now, which I've just discovered I can do. And this was the one from music. Don't know what happened to music, but this is the one here that we were looking at. The oligarchs can't let communism be a thing.
yeah, they can.
They can. And
Yeah,
the other one from music is
they can
this
and
one.
do.
You're absolutely right on all points you've made. We know. Thanks, music. We love you. Hope you've
Well,
subscribed to our
yeah,
channel.
we can retire now.
Yep, I've finished. That's it. No, I need more subscribers, so let's subscribe away, everybody.
Yeah.
Now, Avery, any final passing words before we leave? Because we've now decided that perhaps we don't need, we now don't need to have the military forces that we do from the US. We can dispense with them. We can have other alliances or allegiances with China and other countries, perhaps in the region. Like Vietnam, Cambodia,
Summarize.
Vietnam, which is a communist country. I hasten to add. Cambodia,
In
Thailand.
And Vietnam's got
Philippines,
billionaires.
Indonesia, all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
so Vietnam's got billionaires as well.
They have.
Uh,
They have.
yeah. Where is
So
it? I just saw
look,
it a moment ago. Not many of them.
and there's one final thing that I wanted to talk to you about before we go, and that is, you know the Gulf of Mexico, right? Well, did you know that there's also the Gulf of Tonkin?
Yeah.
You
So you own that.
you're
own all
aware you're aware of that, and that that they named a gulf after me specifically. Now Donald Trump hasn't even got a gulf named after him, but I have a gulf, a significant part of the China Sea, named after me, and I'm
South
flattered,
China Sea, yeah.
and I'm honoured that the Chinese would see me significant enough to be able to, or whoever designs maps anyway. I'll thank Google for having designed, placed me in a gulf, which is great.
Yeah. I my name is known across the world, Avery. Every just about every other set of scales has got my name on it.
Well, when I think of Avery, I think of a bird cage. Is
That's
that?
aviary, slightly different.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, mate. Ah, dear me. Okay, thanks, mate. We can do this
Okay.
next week. Have a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, without a thing. Hold on. JP's got one more up here, which we might just refer to because we can, and we're very versatile. The alliance with the US is returning the favour after World War II, and you're right, fighting of communism, a trade alliance with all of Asia, why not our most nearest and populous neighbours?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
JP, you're a star. We love you.
Yeah.
Keep
Good
up
on
the
you,
good
JP.
work.
Thank you.
So thanks, Avery, and I will sign out from home. I'll catch you at the end of this.
Yep.
So thanks, buddy. I really appreciate your time. Now, I'd like to say to people, just please remember, if you can, to subscribe to my channel for daily updates on the things that are important to both you and I. And I'm sure we can have some interesting conversations about issues that you may agree with me on or may not, whichever that might be. It's always fun to have those conversations, and I appreciate everybody who subscribes to my channel and makes comments. So thanks everybody for being with us. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.